Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to week 2 of Mastering Self. This week we are going to be diving into the ego construct and all of its constructing. We're going to explore how busy it gets, constructing and building. What is it building? And how can we learn to see it more clearly? What are we actually talking about? And so before we move on, I'd love to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I and Sarah are calling from, the Arakwal people of Bundjalung Nation. I'd like to recognize their continued connection to land, water, and community, and paying our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, again, we have people tuning in from different parts of Oz and different parts of the world, Netherlands, UK. So whether you are simply starting your day or coming towards the end of your day, let's, for this next 2 hours, land in this space here together. And so if everyone can close their eyes, get yourself comfortable, and just take a moment. Let's take a moment here together, closing your eyes. As you get yourself comfortable, eyes are closed. Allow yourself, give yourself permission to simply be here, to simply be here. And arrive. From this place here, allow yourself to be in the seat of awareness. Nothing to do here in the seat of awareness, but simply to notice anything that may arise. Within the space that is your awareness. Any sounds from the outside, your breath, the sound of it, or the feel of it brushing up against your nostrils. Any thoughts about the day that's gone by, dinner that you've just had or are wanting to have, or breakfast. Noticing how they arise without you needing to do anything, and in that same way, they fall away without you needing to do anything. Simply notice. And so taking one last deep breath, not the last breath you'll take for today, but maybe the last deep breath for now. And then all the way out. Gently cracking your eyes open when you're ready. And so, for today's session, where the structure of today's session will be reflecting on the last 7 days and what has been for you, what have you noticed, what's been coming up for you since last session, how did you go with some of the practices. Then we'll move into the new content for week 2, which is ego constructing, and we'll explain why it's written in that way. And then we'll be doing an introduction to meditation at the back end, similar to how we did last week, where we introduced breath and deep breathing. We're going to introduce meditation this time around, and then integration for the next 7 days. How do you go about integrating all of today's content in the next 7 days? So, a review of the last 7 days and last session. One of the practices that you had gone home with or received was the hara or belly breathing. So how did you go with that? What was the experience of having a go at that belly breathing? What was your experience during those 5 minutes when you did manage to sit down and get that done for yourself? What was the experience in trying to get that done and find time to sit down for 5 minutes, finding 5 minutes for yourself on a daily basis? Was that easy? What did you find challenging? It's important for us to be able to attend to both of those things. Hey, this is working, but I'm finding this challenging. Really important, because the things you're going to find challenging are actually where your potential lie. And so we want to be attending to those things, and for you to be bringing those things up and be expressing those things so that we can attend to them together. And so as you're listening to me going through this, really be aware of, what came up for you, because you'll be going into a breakout room and sharing with 2 other people. So 3 to 4 people in that breakout room, and sharing what was your experience of the belly breathing. How did you go with the habit development calendar? How many crosses have you got on the wall there? What was your experience in, if you have, completing the integral health and well-being form? Did you find that there were any barriers or challenges in completing the form? Or what did that form bring into your awareness around your health and well-being? What came up for you? And are there any questions from last week or the last 7 days? So into the social space with 2 or 3 other people, and just sharing there what your experience was over the last 7 days with those specific things. Enjoy.
Four of you.
Bob! Didn't get to say hello before. Hello, mate.
Do we call you Bob or Nathaniel?
Whatever's easiest. Nathaniel or Bob is fine.
Bob is definitely easier.
Yeah.
Definitely easier, yeah.
Ness. Hello. Didn't get to say hello before. Justine, hope you're doing okay. Cool. Have we got everyone back now? Yes. And so what came up? in that breakout room, how did you go with the belly breathing and the habit development calendar? What was your experience doing it, trying to do it? And for those that did fill in the health and well-being form, what was the experience in that? What came up for you in that breakout room? Just feel free to unmute yourself and speak out.
Yeah, for me, it was a great experience to share this with other people, to listen to other people's experiences as well. And personally, for me, it was not easy thing to do, to have my mind, make my mind stop thinking and relax against all the things happening during the week, during the day. So I have tried a couple of times and mixed with my other ways of relaxing as well, like listening to the music and trying to do some creative things like photography. Or so gradually I would like to increase and try to experience this more often and to be able to experience this in a more intensive way and be able to say what truly is this doing to me, to my mind, and then but at the moment that's what happened to me, and that's my experience. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing. And when you, Jacek, when you say that, it was a little difficult to try and get to the mind to stop thinking, was that during the breathing practice, or do you mean throughout the day?
When I was thinking about this to do it, it was sort of difficult for me to do against all those things happening to me and in my life currently on daily basis. It's a lot of things, a lot of thoughts, a lot of emotions. So it was difficult to stop my mind completely, to have this empty space in my mind to be relaxed. So that from this point of view, rather. So perhaps we'll have to try more often and see how I go.
Yeah, and we will be exploring more in regards to what to do if you do experience that. Hey, my mind's going nuts. What do I do with this? And for now, just see what happens if you stop trying to stop it. Yeah, and just see what happens then, what the experience is, and give that a go for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have a few more. Who was that?
Yeah, our room was discussing the importance of the integration of self-care and how it correlates with productivity. So sort of that realization that to be more productive, it actually is to slow down and to breathe. Even though it might seem the opposite way, it's actually much more productive, and then bring it back into yourself. We did discuss a bit, it was a bit challenging as things start to get more busy or there's just life in the way, I guess. 5 minutes seems like a lot, and it can be hard to sometimes actually just think 5 minutes, because I don't know why, maybe my brain's like 5 minutes is a lot to just stop if I need to be somewhere else, but usually that would be a normal thing for me. So it was weird noticing how 5 minutes became a lot when 20 minutes of sitting practice was easy. I don't know, different experience.
Thanks, Bridget.
Can I just add to that, because I was in with Bridget, but the suggestion about self-care making you more productive, what I actually meant was I had been exposed this week to the thought that self-care itself is being productive. I've spent so long personally feeling like I need to get stuff done and make the most of every minute of every day, to the point that I've really burnt myself out. I literally have burnt myself. Sorry, pardon the pun. I burnt myself on. I came in a bit late. I apologize. I've burnt myself on the oven, and yeah, I'm in a bit of trouble. Yeah, but just that thought about self-care itself being productivity in the same way that not practicing any kind of self-care, it equates to the opposite of productivity, because we can't physically keep going and going and going. And I found that was an incredible insight this week. But even in spite of logically realizing that, it's still so hard to even persevere for 2 minutes of breathing, let alone 5 minutes. I just found it really tough.
My guess is you're not alone there, Justine. Has anyone else in their life at all found it relatively challenging to, and maybe not even it coming to mind, to take out 5 minutes for self-care because it feels like they're being unproductive and there's other things that need to be done, very important things in the morning with the kids and the routine and all that sort of stuff, that to find 5 minutes, we're talking about 300 seconds, but who else has experienced that in their life? Hands up if you have.
Yeah, I definitely have. Sorry, my video is off because my internet connection is not very good. But yes, I definitely struggled this week, thinking I was too busy and thinking I didn't have 5 minutes. So 3 out of 7 days, I actually did manage to sit down and do 5 minutes of breathing, which I enjoyed. And then one other day I did 2 minutes, and that 2 minutes, I was doing it again just because I was thinking of you, Dan, and thinking of my calendar and thinking, oh, I need to do something's better than nothing. So I did 2 minutes, but it didn't feel good. It felt rushed and my mind was not present at all. Yeah, definitely. And I'm so glad to hear I'm not the only one that struggled with this. I thought turning up to this today, I would be the only one who struggled for some reason, but there we go.
Well, everyone else got 7 from 7, right? 7 days from 7.
Not in my group.
So who else struggled to get those 7 days or 6, 7 days? Hands up. Gil. Beautiful. So we're all in it together. And Michelle, on the surface, doing something is better than nothing. Why is that the case, given what we went through last week? Do you remember?
Because it reinforces the habit, and it's a part of habit creation and change.
Yeah, absolutely. So if everyone remembers those dendrites, those cheeky dendrites, we've only got a finite number of those, and at the moment, they're on the synapse in the brain that chooses not to meditate, because that's most people's habit here is not to meditate at this point in time, or to take that 5 minutes out for that breath work, for those that aren't doing sitting practice at the moment. And so what we want to do is we want to make the decision to do it and sit down, even if it's for 60 seconds, because just by making the decision and embodying that and actually doing it and getting in that position, the brain then has more of those dendrites go over onto the synapse that is actually the path that you're wanting to tread on, which makes it easier and easier and easier as you make that decision and take action on a daily basis, even if it's small. Yeah. So something is better than nothing for that reason, from a neurophysiological perspective as well. Thanks for sharing, Michelle. Who has printed off the habit development calendar? If you can print, yes, Justine.
15 minutes ago.
Better than not at all. Nothing to do with neurophysiology there. So yeah, if you can print that off, right? And now we can go through some real practical, pragmatic things to get this habit development going. the reason we focus so much, and you may not come across habit development in your regular meditation course. Why is it so important? Because meditation's actually, for the most part, useless unless it's a regular and consistent practice. Sure, you can sit down once a week for 5 minutes and you'll have a shift in state. But you can have profound shifts in your perspective, your capacity to not feel stressed in stressful situations if you take this on, right? And so this is why we really focus so much with the habit development here. And so if you can get that printed off, make it a thing for yourself to get that printed off this week. And we said A3 so that it's large enough, and you start putting those crosses through. And so that everyone knows, every time we do a sitting practice in this session here, so last week, this week, that's your sitting practice done. So you can cross those days off as well. It's about getting as many crosses in a row on that calendar. Now, the things that tend to help a lot in making this easier as a daily practice, has everyone had a thought about, and if you haven't, grab your pen and paper, have you had a think about where and when you're going to want to do the sitting practice and you're actually going to be able to? For the most part, first thing in the morning tends to work well, particularly when it's only 5 minutes. It means you either put your alarm clock on 5 minutes earlier or 10 minutes earlier, and start to think about what your morning routine looks like. Yeah, morning routine or a morning ritual. We're going to be speaking to morning routines and rituals, evening routines and rituals. What does yours look like? And so really step by step, to make it easy for your mind so you don't have to be thinking about it and deciding every day, when am I going to do it? Where am I going to do it? And do I want to do it? You can knock all of those out of the way just by going, okay, well, in the morning when my alarm goes off, and it might even be a reminder, because at the moment you might not be used to, this is a new thing in your schedule. And so a reminder that pops up potentially if you need that. Alarm goes off, you wake up, walk up into the bathroom, wash your face with cold water so that you come to a little bit. Go to the bathroom, maybe wash your hands again, then come back into your room or wherever you've chosen the place to be where you're going to be doing your 5 minutes, and let that be the same place, same time. Now, if you feel that evening is going to work better for you, anywhere in the day that's actually where it's actually going to get done is what's most important at this point in time. Mornings are great because you've made a decision to do something for you and fill your own cup before you go out into the day giving to others. So it makes sense to do it in the morning. It also increases your base of support, let's say. If you're sitting in stillness for 5 minutes and you give yourself that little gift in the morning, then you are coming from that place into the rest of the day. And so you will be that much more unable to be thrown off center by whatever might come your way throughout the day. Yeah. So that's why mornings tend to be useful. But at this point in time, choose when can you do that 5 minutes and just stick to it. Yeah. And if it's not working after a few days, pick another time, but then stick with that one and just make it happen. So pick when, pick where, have the habit development calendar sitting there so that once you're done, you can put your cross through, and have that morning routine ready for you, for yourself. If it's the one that I've just spoken to, which is quite useful for a lot of people, the washing of the face with some cold water so that you're not falling back asleep in the middle of your sitting, that tends to work. Any questions about the practice? Yes, Justine.
Sorry, Jane, you call it sitting. So does that mean it's necessary to be sitting Does posture matter? Can
Good
I be lying down?
Good question. And we're going to get into more specifically why it is sitting at the back end of today's call when we introduce meditation. However, the reason we choose to sit, you can stand if you like. We've never had anyone try and do that. But if the reason we choose to sit instead of lying is because when we lie down, the body recognizes this as a time for sleep. And so it continues to release or starts to release melatonin, which is your sleep hormone. And so you're really fighting an uphill battle there if you're wanting to be present and conscious whilst you're there sitting in stillness. So that's why we do choose sitting. Good question. Does anyone have any questions as to, or like other challenges that they found or their experience with the breathing technique to this point? There were some people in the Telegram chat that were speaking to their being, getting a little bit dizzy with the deep breathing. And so be sure to keep it slow, okay, the breathing, and nice and deep. A faster breath is likely to cause that dizziness, but even so, it might take, the body might not be used to you actually, taking in this much oxygen at this point in time. And so allowing a bit of an adaptation period as well. Take a moment to pause and come to your regular breathing pattern, and then try and go a little deeper. If you feel that you're forcing it, it should never feel like you are forcing it. And so back off just a little bit, 10%, and breathe to that depth. And then maybe you can go a little deeper in a couple of days' time again. Yeah?
Dan?
Yes, Mike.
Are you using this breathing technique throughout your entire sitting? So it might be 20 minutes, or 30 minutes, or is this to help you transition into a meditative state?
So this breathing technique is going to form the basis of your meditation, breath, as well as your breathing in your day-to-day. So something that we said last week was that breathing is something that happens consciously and unconsciously, but because of the way we live our lives, we don't even realize that in the doing, needing to be productive, we start to breathe at a higher frequency and more shallow breaths. And so we're just teaching and having the body remember what it already knows how to do, which is to breathe at depth. And we're doing that consciously so that then it can start to do it in our day-to-day unconsciously. Now, what the effect that has on our well-being in our everyday is that if we're breathing better every day, that means that the body is getting less signal that it is in a stressed state, which means there is less cortisol being released through the body, which is the stress hormone, which means the entire body is placed under less stress and spends less time in a state of stress. It is this very thing, like the constant signaling that we are in some level, even if it's mild, state of stress of getting stuff done or needing to get stuff done. It is this very thing that is causing a whole bunch of issues for human beings over the course of 10, 20, 30 years around autoimmune, cancer, heart attack, stroke, seemingly out of nowhere, right? Oh, I had a heart attack out of nowhere. I'm relatively healthy, and so on and so on. Even if we're constantly thinking and feeling like we need to be somewhere doing something, we are telling the body to release cortisol because we need to be doing something, because it needs this to be alert and on. And so if we're constantly doing that, then the entire body is under this state of stress, like consistently throughout the day. And what we're doing here, this is why well-being is such a huge part of this. We're looking to shift gears, and there'll be more on this, learning how to shift gears into a calmer state when we don't need to be in so much of an on state. Yeah. And it's not just to feel good right now, but it's really, really to influence the next 10 to 30, 40, 50 years of your life. Yeah. And we will be speaking in terms of the sitting practice, Mike, breath and tension in the body will be the two pillars that, regardless of how experienced you are as a meditator, if you arrive in a sitting and there's a lot happening, this will always be the foundation of your sitting practice or your meditation.
Thanks, Dan.
Cool. Any other questions or challenges that may have come up for people?
Hi, so brought that breathing into like a work situation when I'm working and getting a little bit anxious, that should help bring the body back down to a state of everything's okay here and you not really need to feel anxious.
Absolutely. So you're really using that breath as a cue to the brain that actually everything's in control because you're controlling your breath and you're allowing it to, you're breathing rhythmically, evenly, and at depth. Yeah. And those three things are what the mind, the vagus nerve, actually recognizes as, okay, everything's in control, everything's in check here. And it's beautiful. What you're speaking to is self-regulation, which we will be speaking to further down the track, where you take what you're practicing in the morning for those 5 minutes every day. By doing it every day, it makes it easier when you're in the middle of a meeting, in the middle of a conversation, to just let that breath out a little more, right? That, maybe not with the vocal because they'll think, what are you doing, right? But let that breath out and start to breathe at a deeper level, and that'll help regulate and normalize the rest of the system there. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's the one thing you can always control in that sense, the breath. Even when you think you can't control anything else.
Bob, you had a question or sharing?
Yeah, Bob, jump in.
Yeah, so we didn't so much, well, I personally didn't so much do breathing practice as such as like sitting down, because I didn't even really occur to me to even do it until I was actually faced with a scenario to do it. So one thing that Kate and I did over this course of this week was, well, I went for a swim almost every day this week and sort of used the cold water to sort of, like, I could feel it like increase in my heart rate go up, and then sort of use the controlled breathing to bring it back down to a situation where my body was warm and I was sort of comfortable in the scenario that I was in. I even did it a few times when just in the shower, like waiting for it to warm up a little bit, and just sort of, I couldn't really get into the practice of it until it was sort of right there. And I was like, oh, maybe I can just cover myself in cold water and then regulate myself and sort of bring it back down to that. Like what would your suggestion be to sort of, I don't know, integrate that to sort of more of a sitting practice instead of only being faced with it when it's there?
Yeah, well, I think it's awesome that you're already, it's your go-to when you're, on the surfboard there in the cold water or in the shower or whatever else. So it's awesome that that's already happening. That's really cool. So just build on that, and to make it easier to access that breath in that way during those moments, whether it's in the cold water or in a conversation where you're feeling a little anxious or overwhelmed or whatever it might be, to make that easy. Those things we've already spoken about, just make a commitment to yourself to be like, okay, in the morning, first 5 minutes before I do anything else, I'm going to do this, right? You may wash your face or go to the bathroom, but then sit down 5 minutes, right? Every day, you don't even think about it, and put that cross through, and know that it gets easier each and every day that you take that action. Yeah, it does get easier, and putting that cross through, and pick a number now. Everyone pick a number. It doesn't have to be the 66 or 70 that we were talking about at the beginning. Pick a number. Your first number is to how many crosses you want to, how many days in a row you want to get in terms of that habit development calendar. It might be 21, it might be 30, and go for it from there. Yeah. Does that help, Nathaniel?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Have you got a time and place that can you see where you're going to do your sitting practice every day?
Yeah, definitely.
Cute.
Yeah.
Sweet. Thanks for that question.
Let's move on.
Thank you.
So last week was the first week setting the foundation. So you all got the opportunity to get to know each other a little bit better. And we've introduced really what this course is going to be about, what it's going to hopefully enable for you. And you also gain awareness about your health and your well-being. Most of you have started a bit of the process, so that's really good. And this week we're going to layer on top of that with an explanation of what the ego is. And we call it ego constructing. Maybe some of you have heard of the word ego before. And we will really explain what how we speak to that in this session. So the ego constructing, let's get straight into it. The ego construct, what do we mean by that? What is the constructing nature of the ego? We're going to go into a breakout room so you can discuss with some other people what your current understanding is of what the ego is.
What have you
How
known?
do you recognize the ego? How do you recognize it within yourself? And just simply, what is your current understanding? What is the ego? Dan?
Yeah, what have you known? All of, everyone's heard of the word ego. So what have you held in mind when you've heard the word ego to this point? This isn't about getting the answer right, but rather simply your current understanding of the ego, and what your awareness of it is to this point in time. Yeah. Cool. So going into a breakout room and sharing with others as to all the different understandings and ideas we have of the ego.
Cool. Welcome back, everyone. Is this everyone? I think so. So what came up there in the conversations? Anyone would like to share their perspective on what is the ego?
Who here has an ego? Put your hand up. And what is it? What do we know about it?
I guess we were kind of like saying it's like a person's sense of self, sort of dictates who you feel you are. And then I guess sort of also interacts with makes you how you interact with people. So it comes out as like whether you, what were we saying? Like the simple act of letting somebody help you was one of the things there. But our ego wouldn't allow us to do it. So it can express itself in strange ways, even though, it seems to get in the way quite a lot. And originally we were actually saying, from a young age, it's just sort of looked upon as negative, like, oh, that person's got a big ego or they're very egotistical. So, and then we were very interested to see where you're going to take it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Dan.
And what would be, Dan, if you would just to expand on it a little bit, what do you think the reason for it being there is, the ego?
The reason that we have an ego?
Yeah,
Good question. I don't know. I would probably say the same that I said before. Like it's just giving us a bit of a sense of self, a bit of self-awareness, I guess, so that it's not just a hive mind potentially.
Okay, cool.
If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Anyone else that likes to add to that sort of description that Daniel just gave? What is their perspective on it?
I think it's some sort of response when someone says something. I think even when you mentioned ego at the beginning of the course, like this is what we're doing, my automatic thought was, oh, I don't have an ego. And I was like, that doesn't even make sense, because like that's just the thought that's arising out of the space. So the ego is the thoughts, the constructed thoughts arising out of the space. However, I feel most of them are habituated. So you don't really recognize them, but as you do meditation, and I think as you become aware of them, that is the breaking down of the habituated ways of thinking, and just accepting every single thought with any, like just any thought, whatever it is. Literally, it could be like the worst thought in the world, but who's the one labeling it as the worst thought in the world? That's just another thought in that way.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Bridget. Definitely also indeed habituated way of thinking, right? So it's the thought about the thought and so on. We will go into this a little bit later, but yeah, thank you for sharing.
Let's get one more.
I'll have a crack. If my internet disappears, then everyone just kind of say we can't hear you anymore. All right.
Okay, for
cool. So yeah, so I mean, for me, and we spoke about this a little bit. It's a construction of who you think, you know, of who you think you are. So it's the kind of things that drive your actions and responses to things. So I won't be spoken to that way because I'm this person, or I wouldn't do this because I'm that person. And I suppose we look at an ego as generally a pretty negative thing. So so we kind of try to distance ourselves from it. So I suppose often when we talk about ego, we associate it with all the things that don't necessarily serve us, or we talk about people's egos in ways that it doesn't necessarily serve them. But I think there's probably two parts to that. So the ego is, I suppose, driving everything about your own individual identity or internal identity. But yeah, often So for me, that's kind of what that is. But it's that construction of who you think you are as an individual.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Jared. So beautiful sharing from Daniel, Bridget, and Jared, all sort of adding up to each other, like how do you call it? Like making a more holistic picture of what the ego is indeed. Like you said, constructing a sense of self. So that's why we call it ego constructing, right? It's in the words. It's constructing as a process, a sense of a someoneness, for sure.
And so we if there's one thing you can take away from today's session, we're hoping it will be a more well-rounded understanding of what we're referencing when we're referencing the ego. So let's
and some of the signs where you can really start picking it up in yourself would be the first and foremost, and also in others, but first and foremost in yourself. So let's just take a moment now. You can close your eyes if you want to. Grab some pen and paper, but first close your eyes for a bit. And sit with this question. Who are you? Who are you? Who is answering this question? We're trying to answer it. Who do you take yourself to be? Who do you feel others take you to be? And even if you've done some of this work before, what is your subjective experience? What can be noticed? Who are you? Who are you? If you're ready, this is an introspective space. So if you're ready, you can open your eyes and you can write down for yourself in your notebook or on your laptop or whatever you've got. What came up?
This is only for yourself. It won't be shared. This entire session, this entire week is about simply starting to see what it is that does come up and arise. Simply starting to see.
And if you think nothing arises, who is thinking that?
We'll give that another 60 seconds or so.
So, very simply put, we've spoken to it a little bit, but we have a description of the ego here that makes it more complete. So the ego is a sense of identity, a sense of I am as someone in the world. The ego is the storyteller and the interpreter. It constantly tells stories about itself and the world. It has particular opinions and ideas about itself and the world. And like what was shared before, there's often a negative connotation with the ego. That's not necessarily true. It's not true at all. Those stories can be useful or not so useful, depending on how we interpret that. Depending on past experiences, that then we choose to label in particular ways. The task of the ego is to create a coherent narrative, a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose in life. And how does it do that? By telling stories about who we are and why we're here. What is our purpose and what are we supposed to do here? So it's here to create lasting meaning. And it's a universal drive to explain everything, to make us feel safe and to make sense of the world and to be in some way important. Whether that's by yourself or by others, being seen as important in some way or as valuable. It's meaning making, so it's a meaning making machine. Meaning doesn't live within reality. It's not out there in reality, it's in here. Stories and meaning. And as we start to create more awareness around the stories, We could become more objective to them. You're not taking them too serious and not personal, because they're not personal. It's for the construct, right? For the ego construct. And it's a process. So it's not necessarily a static thing that's sitting there. It's a continuous process that continually creates a sense of self into identity, into reality, moment to moment. So what you took yourself to be yesterday is maybe different to what you take yourself to be today. It's constantly changing. Why? Why is it constantly changing? Because it's not actually real. Dan?
Just to add with it being the incessant storyteller, it tells all of those stories, including its need to create significance for you, almost as though it doesn't know that you already are innately a significant being. All that which is already true about you, but it's trying to, it's the one that's trying to make up stories because for some reason it doesn't know that already, right? It couldn't ever know what is already true about you in that sense. And so it's also, if you have a look to the right here, the very thing within us human beings that gives us a sense of self and other, the very thing that gives us a sense of separateness. Yeah, there's a very specific part in the brain when they do studies that the ego construct or the default mode network lights up. Yeah, and that's in the prefrontal cortex. And in the 70s, when you had the hippie movement happening and people were working with psychedelics and various plant medicines, and that you heard all of those one-liners of them feeling like they were one with everything. The reason for that is that in that very specific part of the brain, those psychedelics had that part of the brain go offline momentarily. And so there wasn't the sense of separateness. Anything they saw, it wasn't separate. Now, where as human beings did we develop this part and learn this sense of separateness? Language played a huge role in this. At the very, very, very beginning of language, when it was a symbol on a rock wall, and we had first said, this was the first creation of division in that sense, right? We had first said, this is that, right? And so there was this immediate separation. We now label each other and things out there as being distinct, separate parts, right? But all of those exist prior to any label that separates it from something else. And it's all interdependent, and the cycle of everything working together in nature, within our bodies, and so on. We're not going to go too far into that element around the language and symbols. However, we will be doing that in the course that follows this, and we'll be diving pretty deep into that element there. But for now, know that it's the part of us when you're feeling separate, that there is a sense of self and other and separate from others. It's a construct. It's being constructed. It's only because of, now we're linking the two, the incessant story that's being told about the situation. And so this is a beautiful line here. To become cognizant of the pitfalls of the language habit, as well as its tremendous gift to humanity, is a unique feature of the most advanced ego stages. So those models we showed you last week, ego development, the later stages are where we are able to see its pitfalls, where it's not that useful language, but also seeing the beautiful gift that it is simultaneously. And so that's the journey that we're on.
So just to bring it back to this moment now, is there a sense of I'm here and there are others over there? Because that's that, right? You can recognize it right now. Is there a sense of there's someone here and there's other people there on the call? It can be very subtle, doesn't have to be a strong feeling, just this subtle sense of this is me and that's them over there, because that's that sense of self and others. And that's the story that's repeating itself. So this is a model for some of you have seen already the NLP communication model, and this is kind of a different version from that. And it really explains how the ego works. So how we filter reality through the mind. So for example, here on the left-hand side, you see an external event. An external event can be anything from being on a course right now to a dog passing by, walking by, a car driving by, two people talking to each other, ordering a coffee, really anything that can happen in the world, anything that you can see in the world. That then gets filtered through the filters of mind. These are, for example, memories, language, like Dan have already mentioned, values that you might hold as important, certain beliefs. The way you code time, so the way you perceive time, that's where then productivity, things like that come in, like we talked about earlier this evening. What does that even mean, productivity? When we say that, what do we mean by that? It's all filtered through these filters of mind. And in these filters also sit the 60 meta programs. And 60 meta programs are thinking patterns. So it's a particular way of thinking. And they always operate on a spectrum. So it's a duality. Later in the course, we're going to go into Enneagram typologies. And for each Enneagram type, there are about 5 to 7 meta programs that sort of cluster together. And that's what makes it a typology. So that's how we can recognize a typology. It's a cluster of meta programs. And they all sit in those filters of mind there.
And your Enneagram is your personality type.
Yeah. Then from there, we go into the thinking. So you can see thinking there. And this is really anything that happens in mind in terms of thought processes. You can see again the storyteller, the ego constructing. So the thinking can be, I feel frustrated or excited, or I feel overwhelmed or stressed. I really like that, or I really don't like that. Just anything that you tell yourself during the day, that's all being noticed there in the thinking mind there. Those narratives can be very subtle. There might be some narratives that you can see that are quite objective, so you can actually watch them and observe them, but there might be some narratives that you're actually subjective too, so you don't really see them playing out. It's just kind of happening. So that's kind of what Bridget was pointing to before. It's an habitual way of being, right? It's a habit. And it can happen very unconsciously as well. Then you see there underneath the thinking, you see the feeling. And feeling, we can really simply explain as a contraction in the body, so tightness, or an expansion, an openness. And the reason that we have a loop there between thinking and feeling is because that's how that mechanism works. So we think about our feeling and we feel about our thinking, and we think about our feeling and think about our thinking and feel about our feeling, and so on. And that's how we just bounce back and forward within our own ego construct, in a sense. So we might often, what people also do, I feel angry. Well, angry is not a feeling, anger is a thinking. How do you know to call that particular energy in the feeling center, which is simply energy in motion? When people say emotion, energy in motion, moving energy through the body, similar to how energy is moving through a tree, or to a flower, or through the ocean, whatever it is. But we then have certain opinions and ideas about those energies, and we may like them or not like them. And that's how we then experience certain, what we call emotions. And the big loop with this is that if we start to suppress, like we don't want to feel certain feelings, or we don't want to think this particular thought, that's when they become more, right? So really the offer is to start seeing this dynamic playing out. maybe through just observing this model, there's already more awareness and more objectivity to what's happening. Just by seeing this model, just by knowing this cognitively as an understanding, and now start to play around with it in your day-to-day life. And really the offer is to observe, nothing to change, because the very act of wanting to change that is in that same bind. And you can't solve the problem from the level that it is created. So we're going to have better feeling about our thinking, and now we're going to have better thinking about our same stuff, right? Still playing in that same bind. So really, the first step is to observe. To observe it as a processing unit playing out, moment to moment, creating a sense of, I'm someone in the world. Then have you got something to add there?
No.
Cool. So really all narratives, all commentary in mind are from the ego. But these are some common ones, common narratives. So who here has experienced a sense of not being good enough ever in their life? Sometimes now, today. Being frustrated, resistant, or angry. Judgmental, or fear of judgment. So judgmental about yourself or about other people, or fear of being judged. Your perspective is obviously the right one. Stress, overwhelm, or anxiousness. Worrying about others may think or how they might feel about you. We can see this in a particular meta program as well. It's called over-responsibility. We don't have to go into that right now, but often people feel that they're responsible for what other people think or feel. You're not. Similar to how other people are not responsible for how you think or feel. So really what you can take away from that as well is you're creating your own reality. No one out there can do it for you, or no event or nothing out there can do that for you. The reality you're experiencing is based on your filters and your beliefs. You can change them, it's just a habit. That's the good news. It's a completely subjective experience. Another sign of which is kind of what we talked about before, the productivity, right? The feeling to constantly be doing something. Chronic busyness, that's what we see a lot in Western society today as well. Constantly doing something. So these are just some signs to become aware of it. It's just some things that some narratives, common narratives that we laid out, but really, what can you start to notice for yourself? What are some narratives that are playing in mind often that you can become more aware of?
So beautiful quote here by Zach Bush. Just hitting right home. The biggest problem we all face. So Zach Bush is a doc from the US who's playing a huge role in integral health across the world at the moment. And the biggest problem we all face is the story that we tell ourselves of what our lives have been. It's keeping us in a box. The cubicle you're really living in is your story. And so that's what we're wanting to do, is to start to shine a light on that story. What is that narrative that you're telling yourself about the situation out there? And so now, given all of that, what do we do now? Egolessness does not mean the absence of a functional self. A lot of people think, well, without my ego, would I just end up sitting in a forest doing nothing all day long? Not at all. The functional self remains. That's a psychotic, not a sage. It means, egolessness means that one is no longer exclusively identified with that self, with the storyteller. So we simply want to start to see it for what it is and to see through the illusion that it is, because it's arising and falling away, constructing and falling away, constructing and reconstructing. Yeah. And so who here, I want a show of hands, who here has judged before? Either yourself or others. Good one, Dan, straight up. King, show of hands, cool. And so you've noticed the voice that's judging. Yeah, the voice that might be like, man, I suck at that. Or man, that sucked. Or what's that person doing? Why are they wearing that? Why is he talking like that? Why is he saying that to me? Or whatever that was, right? And I'm sure there've been worse judgments than that. Yeah. And so you hear that voice. People have heard that voice in the mind, whatever it might be, whatever story it might be telling. Well, what we're going to call that, just so that you can start to notice this a little more, is the ego. Yeah. That judging is the ego. Looking out into the world, sometimes how it's doing things in the world and judging it. Okay, couple steps ahead. So who here has then heard a second voice that comes in and judges the judging? What are you thinking that for? You don't need to be doing that. You don't know that person's life story. You don't know where they've been. Why are you being so harsh on yourself? That voice, yeah? The authoritarian voice, the corrector. That's judging the judging. And often the experience is what these circles represent. You have the initial judging, which kind of doesn't feel great to begin with. And then the meta stating, where we judge the judging and it amplifies the experience. Yeah. And it's that's looking at the judging and it's judging it. And that's what we're calling the superego. Yeah. And this can take shape or the form of anyone in your life, of a teacher from school, of a spouse, a partner, a boss, people that sometimes you might hear us as your superegos whilst you're there in the sitting going, don't try and stop the thoughts. Oh yeah, don't try and stop the thoughts. Just sit with the thoughts. And these voices will come in. That's the superego. Yeah, they take shape of people that the correctors or authorities in your life, whatever it may have been. Now, so you've got the judging, you've heard the judging, and then you heard the voice that comes over the top and judges the judging. Yeah, everyone's experienced that before. For you to be aware of these two voices playing out, there must have been something else aware of these two voices. Because if you were aware of it and you were not those two voices, but you were aware of it, what was that? And is there any sound actually or noise being created there? The one that is aware of the judging and the judging. That's what we would call your me. Yeah, that is me, that deep sense of me that is silently witnessing. No noise there. It is the very reason you can be aware of these voices in your head. You may call it the observer or the witness, but that place there that doesn't contain noise is the thing that has been present in your life since day dot. It has been present in your life when you were 5, and all of the things that were happening, the thoughts that may have been happening then, and how those thoughts changed and how your body changed. It was aware of all of that as you went into puberty and your teenage years, went through high school. The thing that was always there was this space of silent observing and witnessing that was always aware of all of this change, that the only thing that didn't change
Was even there when you were born or before that?
prenatal consciousness.
And so, and to mention there also with the judging and the judging of the judging, some people experience that more in mind as a voice, so literally a voice talking to itself. But some people experience that more kinesthetically, so it is actually more an experience in body. That's why we showed earlier also the loop between thinking and feeling, because there can be a difference for people in terms of where they experience this playing out. And the judging often is a contracting energy. So it's kind of like a contracting energy, an inward energy. It's not open or expansive. It's kind of like contracting. Yeah.
And these two here, it's really important to start to, you know, if you are to receive this as a concept so that you can first start to understand it, is that these two voices or any of the narrating happening is your I. Whenever we're referring, oh, I this, I want that, or I that's your identity. That's the construct. That's the ego construct collectively, this space here. And when we reference me, this deeper sense of me, that's back here, yeah? The witness. Now, really going into your week, looking to notice all of those voices, and we will be sending invoices out for those extra voices in your head taking this course. Now, the key signs for you to notice of the ego constructing, there's going to be two, yeah? You might notice these signs, right, which might be more of mind if you're experiencing blame, resistance, defensiveness, superiority, inferiority, anger, frustration, annoyance. These are key signs of the ego. Remember we said the ego is a sense of self and an other. So blaming something out there, resistance to something out there, sense of self and other, defensiveness from something, superiority, which is the most common ego definition that people carry around, better than someone, superiority over someone. But ego is also inferiority, feeling under someone. And then there's anger, frustration, and annoyance. And no, this is really, really important with the slide that Sarah was speaking to, where you had the external event and the filters of your mind, and it runs through there. And then you tell a story about what's happening, that actual event. No one can ever make you feel angry, frustrated, annoyed, inferior, superior, defensive, resistance, or blame. No one can make you feel those. If you ever thought it was someone else's fault, it's only the story that you are telling yourself about the situation that has you feel angry, frustrated, annoyed, inferior, superior, defensive, resistance, blame. Now, how do we know that to be true? Because we could place 10 different people, only 10, in front of that same event, same person saying something, whatever it might be. And there will be a different story because there's different filters. So a different story that's being run here. And so they may still feel angry or frustrated, but to a different degree, or they might not at all, or any of these other signs. So start to catch that for yourself. It's like, okay, cool, I'm feeling one of these things. I'm experiencing one of these things here. What story am I telling myself about the situation? This is where the power comes in. Just start to notice, what story am I telling myself about this situation here? Yeah, that's causing me. The story I am telling myself is causing me to feel any of these. Yeah, that's the first one. And then we get into some embodiment work, where we look at the mind-body connection. They are not separate. The unconscious mind is intricately connected to the body, and they are responding constantly to one another. And so you're going to experience the energetic signature of the ego construct. And so we go after this. Cool. So if we stop the share here, if everyone can get comfortable and close your eyes for a moment. Closing your eyes. Taking a deep breath in. And all the way out. And I want you to think of a single point in time, today, in the last week, in the last year, a single point in time where you experience being significantly angry, annoyed, or frustrated, or felt blame for someone. Allow a specific scenario come to mind that you actually experienced. Give me a little micro nod when you have that in mind. Okay, keeping your eyes closed. And I want you to give yourself permission and allow yourself to fully be there in that experience of experiencing that blame, frustration, anger, annoyance. See the person, if there was someone there that may have been involved, the situation that was playing out. And what was it specifically that was causing you to feel so angry or frustrated or annoyed or feeling blame or defensiveness? And allow that feeling that's running through your body of blame, frustration, anger, and that thing that caused you to feel blame, frustration, anger, amplify that feeling. If it's at a 6 out of 10 or 7 out of 10, amplify it, turn the notch up on it to an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, feeling of being frustrated, angry, annoyed. As you arrive at this 10 out of 10 experience of that, where, just take note, where in your body, keeping your eyes closed, does the energy run? Does the blame, anger, frustration take place? Where specifically in your body? And in that part of your body, how would you describe the sensation in that part of the body? Is it tight, restriction, open, floaty? What's the sensation of in that part of the body of blame, anger, frustration? Taking a deep breath. And all the way out. Gently opening your eyes. And writing down very simply where in the body and the sensation. Okay. And now, just to shake that out a little bit, if everyone can just give their body a little bit of a shake, a little bit of a wiggle, moving around. That's it, Jared. Bit of a slap in the face if you can. Shake that body around a little bit. Okay. Closing your eyes once again. Deep breath in. And all the way out. This time round, I want you to bring into mind a single moment in time where you experienced yourself being completely free, completely liberated to be yourself. Maybe in the last day, last week, last 6 months, last 10 years. Single specific moment. You may have been with people, simply alone, doing something specific, just feeling completely free to be you. As you allow that feeling in, allowing yourself to experience that experience fully, you feel that energy running through the body. I want you to turn the notch up on that feeling of being completely free, from a 5 or 6 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10, an 8, right up to a 9 and 10 out of 10, feeling of being completely free to be you. And notice, where in your body do you experience this feeling of being free to be you? And how would you describe the sensation in this part of the body? Gently opening your eyes when you're ready. So writing that down, where in the body was that experience, the feeling of being free to be you? And what was the sensation? And so if we can get 4 quick shares for that first round where you experienced blame or frustration or annoyance, simply unmuting yourself and saying, maybe you don't have to speak to the experience, but felt frustration in this part of the body and this was the sensation. And then we'll get through the 4 pretty quickly in that sense.
Stomach, heart and tight.
Stomach, heart and tight. Okay, next person. Thank you, Antoinette.
Chest tight.
Chest and tight. Next person.
Gut.
And chest and hot.
Chest and hot. Michelle, thank you. Kate.
And gut uneasiness and heart rate increase. So chest and gut.
Okay. And what does uneasiness feel like in the gut?
Good question. It's kind of just it's like a sickness, like almost a nausea, but I call it uneasiness.
Okay, thank you. And so, can anyone hear the commonality there, the common theme around the sensation particularly? We had chest, we had gut. Can you hear the common thread there? Tightness. Can we name the sensations again, what they were? Heat, tightness.
Heart.
Sorry?
Heart.
The sensation?
Yeah.
Hard.
Tighten. Hard.
Yeah, hard. Yep, cool. So can you see how those three are, well, I'm going to speak to heat quite separately, but the first two are states of contraction. Yeah. So the state of the ego construct, you might be experiencing blame and so on, but for those that are more in tune with what's happening in the body, if you just check in the moment and be like, hey, am I in a state of tightness, contraction, hardness, tension, torsion, whatever it might be, in the chest, in the gut, wherever it might be, immediately that is a sign of being in the state of the ego. Yeah. Now, heat is an interesting one. So if someone is feeling heat, that tends to be a sign of the construct, ego construct. But when you're purely free to be you, the joyful sense of you, just free, warmth is the word that comes up. So that's the difference in that dynamic, warmth versus heat. Like, and when we're angry, we can feel heat, but you don't necessarily say, I'm feeling a gentle warmth, right? When you're angry, right? So now let's get 4 people to share where in the body and the sensation for when you were completely free to be you. Where and what was the sensation? Go for it.
Deep heart.
Sorry?
The deep heart.
Deep in the heart. Yeah.
Deep, open, light, free, goes to the rest of the body.
Open, light, free. Beautiful. Thank you. 3 more people.
Gut space.
Yep. And the sensation?
Is space one?
Or you said gut space. Sorry, got yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like, sorry, yeah, like gut and then the space. Yeah.
Cool. So gut and spaciousness, lightness from Antoinette, just so I can remember. 2 more.
I felt tingling in my hands and my feet, almost like a rush of increased circulation, a lightness, and suddenly so much easier to breathe.
Beautiful.
Compared to being really tense in my neck and shoulders and constricted here in the last. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Justine. And 1 more person.
Yeah, it was lightness for me as well. Yeah.
Beautiful. So again, can we hear the commonality there? When everyone experiences a state of their natural state of just being free to be them, whatever that is, yeah, it is one of expansion. The body experiences it as a state of expansion, lightness, tingly through the extremities. It can be in the chest and gut as well, where we can experience spaciousness, but it tends to be, it radiates outward in that sense. A lightness, floatiness, people can say as well. And so really starting to notice this, how this plays out. And can you look at what we just did there? We just reimagined and rethought a story. How often do we find ourselves doing this, where we replay something that's happened again and again and again and again and again, and then we're feeling a particular way as a result of us replaying this thought? Everyone here could relive that for themselves, but we're constantly doing that in our day-to-day lives to varying degrees, reliving most of the time anything but the present moment. And you are not alone. We're all part of this. It's why we're on this call together, and we're all in process here in this journey. It's not to get somewhere, but all in process, just to simply start to be aware of the story that we are telling ourselves. Everyone here, it's proof, everyone here just made themselves experience anger, blame, frustration because of what they thought. So next time you experience anger, blame, frustration, superiority, inferiority, whatever it might be, what story are you telling yourself about the situation? And then notice what you might find out is there might be a judgment of the fact that of yourself, that you're telling yourself a story that's causing all of that. Notice that. Do it with love and do it with the kindness, yeah, a softness. Like, it is okay, because this here, the ego, is a habituated set of thinking and behavioral patterns. It's a habit. It's a tape recorder. It's a tape recorder, but guess what? We can re-record this tape recorder to be a more useful one. And we want to be able to see the useful patterns and the not so useful patterns. And the key to both of those is to be able to see it first. And that's our sole focus. Nothing to do but to see it in the next 7 days.
What comes up as well, to just add to that, is really the antidote to the judgment or the judging of the judging, or the trying to push it away, or wanting to experience more of that lightness, because the I can't experience that. It's not from that place. Is to unconditionally love all of it without conditions, right? So not preferencing one experience over the other. Unconditional love for all of it that can be seen. That's really just the antidote for, yeah, that's all that needs to be said.
And so, any questions there at all? Pretty clear. We do have 10 minutes, and fully understand if people need to jump off if it does go to 15, and we'll continue recording, but we won't go any further than that. And so I'll bring this in. To summarize, mature integration as a human being entails an increasing capacity to notice ego's workings. Exactly what we were just saying. At the same time, we can lighten up and experience the simple and childlike joy of being alive. We can delight in the senses and our inner world, moment to moment, as well as appreciate the lives and struggles of humanity. Yeah. Have a humility around this happening rather than a judgment of it. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's get into the meditation for this week. Are there any further questions on the ego constructing? No. So the meditation for this week, who here has meditated before? Hands up. Okay. What is meditation? We're going to start from the very beginning. Yeah. What is meditation? Just unmute yourself.
Taking the time to be present in the moment.
Thank you, Michelle. Beautiful. What else have we got?
Doing nothing. Just
beautiful. Thanks, Ash.
Coming home.
Absolutely. Coming home to you, being free to be you. One more.
Sitting and observing my thoughts.
Absolutely. So starting to place ourselves in that seat of awareness and practicing placing ourselves in that seat of awareness. That seat of awareness, remember the diagram that we had of the ego, superego, and your me, a deeper sense of me that's always been silently witnessing, no noise happening there. Can we bring ourselves and practice coming from there? And a really simple definition for meditation is practicing a single point of focus. We have a bandwidth of focus, and our society is very used to having that focus be split 100 ways, maybe even more, constantly different things grabbing our attention. So can we practice simply bringing back to a single point of focus and giving the rest of our body a bit of rest and reprieve? And so regardless of how advanced you are in your meditation practice or not at all, breath and body awareness / letting go of tension These two things are going to be the pillars of your meditation practice, regardless of how advanced you get. And we started with breath last week to start to access the deeper parts of the lung. And today we're going to continue doing that deeper breathing. However, we're just going to bring our awareness to our breath. Yeah, as it's exiting the nostrils and entering back in. And that simple thing, just body awareness in itself and awareness of the breath, will start to bring the brain waves down and have us calm down and allow the rest of the nervous system to start to calm down, to switch gears into that slow state, or at least a state where we can be more open and focused, but not so attentively focused in that sense. And so when you sit down, so meditation is often a highly loaded word. Yeah. If you ask someone, hey, can you show me how you meditate? Or, hey, can you meditate? And all of a sudden you need to show someone, then, okay, well, you need to sit a particular way and you need to put your fingers together and you need to do a bunch of stuff all of a sudden. It's why we call it sitting practice. Who here could sit with their eyes closed? Who can do that? Put your hand up if you can sit with your eyes closed. Cool. Really, real fun fact for you. We're going to be weaving science into this a fair bit. Fun fact, 80% of the sensory stimulation that comes in your way comes through the eyes. You shut the eyes down and immediately you are that much calmer throughout the rest of the body. Yeah, there may still be tension being held, which is why we bring that in further down the track. It's simply sitting there and taking the time to close your eyes for 60 seconds, taking a moment or 5 minutes every day is a really, really powerful act for yourself and for your health for the rest of your life, and therefore everything you're wanting to do and influence positively in the rest of your life. And so get comfortable. The first 60 seconds of your sitting practice, allow yourself to burp, fart, scratch an itch, whatever it might be. Just get yourself comfortable, and that gong will go off. So I hope everyone's downloaded Insight Timer. The gong will go off. And what I want you to open up with is, give me a moment with me. In your mind's voice, that me, not the I identity. You're just speaking to your construct, your ego, and letting it know, hey, just give me a moment with me. A deeper sense of me. And as you say that in your mind's voice, give me a moment with me. You just allow your body to receive that. And then you'll bring your awareness to your breath. And so if everyone can close their eyes, and we'll just go through a 5-minute sitting together. And this sitting is one that you'll continue to do for the rest of the week, and make a cross on your calendar. And you can feel free to keep your hands on your chest or on your belly if you like during this sitting. So starting off with, give me a moment with me, with your mind's voice. Taking a breath in so that you can take a really good breath out, all the way out. And then breathing through the nose. I want you to start to count 4 breaths on the way out. And then floating, not necessarily holding, but floating at the end of those four counts for 2 seconds. 1, 2, and back up. 2, 3, 4, and at the top floating for a moment. 2, and back out. 2, 3, 4, floating at the bottom for 2, and back in. 2, 3, 4, at the top for 2, and then out. 2, 3, 4. You can continue the counting for as long as it is useful on the breath out, and gently just floating as the breath turns around at the bottom to come back in. 3, 4, and 2 seconds at the top as it turns around, come back down in no rush at either end. And even allowing your body to take over the process. You can continue counting. And allowing for that slower breath. And if you notice at any point your mind wandering off, or a thought that arises, that is a huge win, actually, because you've just become aware of a thought that's running. Notice it, acknowledge it, and then your go-to is to return back to your breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out. 1, 2, 3, 4. In. 1, 2, 3, 4. And even if you catch your mind or a thought arise every 2-3 seconds, each time you are practicing and strengthening your capacity to become aware of thoughts in the first place. So each one is a win and not a failed meditation sitting. Go through a couple more cycles, 2 more cycles of out and in. When you finish, don't be too quick and too much of a rush to leave the sitting. Take your time. Whenever the gong goes off, take your time 30 seconds to 60 seconds. Wait for the gong to completely finish ringing. Then gently start to move your fingers, your hands. And gently, gently open your eyes when you're ready. And so regardless of where you are at with a practice, if you already have a practice or not, allow yourself to revisit and get back in touch with the fundamentals of sitting, of meditation. These will progress over the course. We have a whole 10 weeks together. These will progress over these 10 weeks. And so the only thing for you to really attend to is the practice, because it's only a practice if it's been practiced, and it's only going to really, you'll receive all of the benefits from it if it is happening regularly and consistently, even if it's just for a little bit. Any questions with that practice, or all pretty clear? Okay, if you do have any questions, jump into the Telegram app and ask them there, or send us an email. But there's loads of good energy happening in that Telegram app, which is just the alternative to WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. And Lawrence, would you like to add anything else to round that session up?
Yeah, so we've thanks everyone for filling out the various forms and providing the various information. And then for anyone who hasn't got around to it yet, we've got a few people still who need to provide availability for pod practices to jump on the Telegram app. And there's a couple of forms. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send out a reminder in the email along with the recording for this week. Once that's all live on Kajabi, just going through again the various forms and things to fill out. Most of you have done most of them, which is great, so thanks. But the more we've got the complete set, the more will be for this journey together. So yeah, happy practicing, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all of your energy in the chat as well. And yeah, please reach out, and we look forward to seeing you next week for stages of development, a really, really big one there, human maturing. We're really looking forward to that session there. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
We're gonna be doing a, what was it, deep ecology thing again with Lawrence.
Lawrence,
Yes,
are you doing that?
yeah, definitely. We've got some workshops in the pipeline as well. So it'll be deep ecology, integral ecology. Thanks for the prompt, Bridget. We'll put some info about that out soon.
No, the last one was so good, and I missed doing it.
Okay, good to know. At least I know one person will turn up. Thank you.
Sarah or Dan, can I just ask a question regarding the Telegram?
Yeah.
Sure.
When I try to join it, it just tells me that it's like Safari can't open the specified address. I need to do something.
Is this on your phone or on the laptop?
Oh, laptop.
Yeah, so potentially you need to, have you downloaded the app on your phone?
No, not yet. Should I do that?
Probably if you try that, try to download the app on your phone, and then you probably need to scan a code on your laptop.
Oh,
And
okay.
like a number gets sent to your phone or something like that, and then it should link up there.
Okay.
Or if you got anything to add there, like that's been my process at least with it. That worked for me. So
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Sarah, for clarifying. Yeah, so for everyone else who's here and watching the recording, and I'll remind everybody about this, but Telegram works with a phone number. So the first step is to download the app onto your phone, link it to your phone number, and then you'll be able to get the desktop version going after that.
Oh, awesome.
So hopefully that will clarify things, and we'll get a few more people joining.
Cool. Thank you.
Please keep an eye out for Telegram this week. I'll be putting an extra video into there, speaking to the integral health and wellbeing form and what role that's going to be playing, and maybe a little bit more to the sitting practice and checking in around that. So tune in for that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, good day.
You too.
Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
you.
Thank you.